Well, hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about some minimalist budgeting tips. And managing your money well and becoming financially free isn't just about how much money you make. It's about consistently making good decisions with the money that you have. If you make $45,000 a year and are able to save $1,000 a month, you're far better off than the person who earns $145,000 a year and spends more than they make. Which, for the record, that $45,000 a year example was Christopher and I for the first few years of our marriage. We made a significant amount less than the US national average household income, and yet we were still able to save by being intentional. And really the number one key that we found to being intentional with our money and working towards financial freedom is to have and stick to a budget. And we really have seen this play out in our personal lives. We've been able to live completely consumer debt-free, paying cash for big expenses like cars. And it's also how we were able to save up for and put 20% down on our first home before I even turned 25. And all of that's really just to say that budgeting and living below your means, no matter how much you make, can have a huge impact on your finances and your future. So with that in mind, let's dive into this and talk about some of the biggest minimalist budgeting tips that you can use to manage your money better and to work towards financial freedom. Before we get into this though, make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already. And remember, you can always follow me on Instagram too for daily inspiration and updates. Okay, let's get into our budgeting tips now though. And my first tip is really just to keep things simple. And we are talking about minimalist budgeting after all, but especially when it comes to our finances, I find simplicity so important because it helps us to create a system that we understand and can easily implement. One that doesn't get us too caught up in the details to really focus on the big picture. So when it comes to creating my actual budget, what I like to do is to use a simplified version of zero-based budgeting. And if you're not familiar with it, zero-based budgeting literally just means that for every dollar that you have coming in, you have a designated place where it's going. So every dollar you have goes somewhere. So to get started, all that you need to do is to list out all of the money that you make in a month. And this can be from your job, from a side hustle, from a hobby that you get paid for. If you have additional income streams, count those too. Add all of your revenue sources together, and that's your income. And once you have that number, it's time to start budgeting. And we're going to divide all of the income we make into one of three categories: saving, giving, and spending. And those categories really just represent the three basic things that you can do with money. You can save it for use down the road, you can give it away, and you can enjoy it, or you can spend it. And saving and giving are pretty straightforward, they're uncomplicated. Just pick what you're going to be saving for and giving to, and you can allocate the money accordingly. But with the spend category, I do like to divide it a bit further into a few specific kind of buckets. Obviously, not all spending is created equal, so I like to get a bit more specific with the spend section of my budget. And I like to break this category down into three main sections: paying off debt, especially if you have any consumer debt; your fixed expenses, so those expenses that don't really change from month to month and tend to be more on necessities. So this could include housing, utilities, insurance, things like that. And then finally, there's your variable expenses. These are the things that do change from month to month. And this can include things like groceries, eating out, travel, and entertainment. And essentially with those categories, all you need to do is go through and divide up your money into the appropriate buckets until you've accounted for every dollar. And with your budget, you can really get as detailed as you want with it. But I find that having these simple categories and allocating money towards those really can help you to get a good overview and a roadmap of where your money is going and what you want to do with it. At the end of the day though, it's just so important that we have a budget that we understand and can easily use. Because no matter how fancy a budgeting system might look, if we don't understand it and if we can't use it, then it's not actually going to work for us. Okay, and that brings us to another big tip, and that's to start with saving. I think that a lot of us would say that savings are a priority for us, but what we do is just live our lives throughout the month, paying bills as they come, buying things as they present themselves to us, and then we get to the end of the month and kind of save from what's left over. But if managing your money well and saving money is a priority for you, then we need to treat it as such by tackling it and deciding what we're going to save right at the beginning of the month. Think of it this way. If you start your month with spending, with paying bills, with groceries, with going out to eat, with travel, with experiences, with everything that life entails, and then only save what's left over at the end of the month, what you're basically saying is, my financial future depends on leftovers. And so instead, if we want to make savings really a priority in our lives, not just in word, but in action, we need to kind of flip this on its head and start with deciding how much we're going to save, and then just allocate the rest of our money accordingly. Now, quick note on this one, if you're in debt outside of a home mortgage, I'd recommend swapping out making saving a priority to really making getting out of debt a priority, because getting out of debt really is the number one thing that you can do in working towards financial freedom. Okay, and then another big tip is to keep your lifestyle in check. If we aren't paying attention, it can be so easy to let this one get out of hand. And so we need to be intentional about how we're using our discretionary income. And minimalism really can help with this one. When we're really thinking through the physical purchases that we make, it becomes really easy for us to save money and to keep our lifestyle more in check. But what I challenge you to consider is that this isn't just talking about physical possessions. Yes, the physical items that you own are a part of your lifestyle, but this also encompasses experiences, travel, eating out, and so many of those non-tangible things. And when left unchecked, these lifestyle factors can be a huge drain on your resources. And that's why it's so important to allocate money ahead of time through your budget to each of these things. That way you can know kind of going into an experience or a travel opportunity or anything like that, what you want to spend, and it kind of gives you a predetermined kind of boundary to stay in between. And that's just going to help you to stay on track with working towards your financial goals. You can enjoy the experience in the moment, but also know that what you're doing isn't actually going to be hurting your financial future. And a little tip to kind of take this one to the next level is really just a challenge for you that as your income grows, whether that's because you got a promotion or you took a new, better paying job, try, rather than immediately increasing your lifestyle because you now have a higher income, instead living how you always have and just putting that additional money towards savings. That can be a really powerful way to reach your goals even faster. All right, and then our next tip really plays in perfectly to that, and that's to be willing to make sacrifices. Financial freedom, whether that's getting out of debt or saving for the future, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time and dedication, and it isn't always easy. In fact, it usually isn't. It can be hard to say no to things like eating out with friends when you've already used up your restaurant's budget for the month, or deciding not to go on a trip that you realistically can't afford. Or one that's happened to me a lot in the past is friends inviting me to these $60, $70, or $80 classes where you'll learn how to bake cookies or make a few meals for a couple of hours. And all those classes sound like really fun experiences, but especially when we were at the lower end of our income, I had to look at it and be critical with myself and say, okay, is this $80 better spent towards this class or in saving for our future? And so I'd have to go back to the people who invited me and say, sorry, no, I can't come. And that's really difficult in the moment. But when it comes to our finances, we need to remember that it's not a sprint. This is a marathon we're running. We really need to play the long game, and sometimes that involves making short-term sacrifices so that we can reach our long-term goals. And then finally, number 5 is to watch your influences. We naturally tend to imitate the people that we spend time with and the voices that we listen to. As Jim Rohn famously said, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. But where I would really challenge and want to add to that is, yes, we absolutely do become like the physical people around us, but the media that we take in, the podcasts that we listen to, the creators that we follow also can hugely impact the way that we think about and spend our money. And all of those influences combine to hugely impact what we value, how we save money, and how we spend it too. So if you really want to make smart decisions about your money, it is absolutely essential that you surround yourself with people and with voices who are going to help you do just that. We don't want to go to the broke person for advice on how to save our money. And likewise, we don't want to go to the person who spends thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a year on clothing for advice on how to spend it. So my encouragement here is really just to be thoughtful about who you allow to influence you, especially when it comes to your finances. Pick the right people and you'll be able to hit your financial goals maybe even faster than you were planning to. But pick the wrong people and it really can lead you the opposite direction of where you're wanting to go. And that's not at all to say to cut out the people from your life who aren't financially aligned with you, but just to be careful who you're actually taking advice from. All right, well, those are a few of my biggest minimalist budgeting tips that can really help you to manage your money better. And I really hope this helps you as you work towards your money goals and take steps towards financial freedom. But now I want to know, is there a minimalist budgeting tip that you personally use that I didn't mention here? Be sure to comment that down below. I'd love to hear about it. And if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, I would so incredibly appreciate it if you just hit the like button for me. It's something small that you can do. It takes just a second of your time, but it can really help my channel grow and reach even more people. And of course, if you're new around here, welcome. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss a single video. I post twice a week on this channel about simple and intentional living, and I'd love to have you join me. And finally, don't forget that if you're looking for additional daily inspiration and updates, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Ashlynne.Eaton on there. And as always, I'll have that linked up in the description box below. All right, well, that's everything for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.